Hi everyone and welcome to module number 5. As I told you before at the end of module number 4, today in this lesson we'll focus more on another dichotomy, the mind-body dichotomy, prevalent in Western dualist thinking, and it's made visible in and by artworks in Western art. To do that, we'll use a PowerPoint presentation. So let's start. This module, number 5, makes visible the connection between gender stereotypes that equal the concept man with dichotomy mind and the category woman with the dichotomy body, and looks at how these socially constructed gender stereotypes are being constituted through representation in visual art. Through the means of looking at art from different historical moments and geographical locations in Europe, we will engage with how the gendered mind-body dichotomy is being depicted, produced and reproduced, and normalized in our cultural consciousness by works of art, and particularly by the European oil painting tradition of the nude, which places the woman's body as a site for the male gaze and desire. And for this purpose, it will be very interesting to have a look at this link of John Berger's ways of seeing the female nude. So let's have a look together. How these visual representations in art can work to normalize sexism and gender-based violence, particularly against women and girls in today's world. However, as artistic practices also enable creative and novel opportunities to rethink, reimagine, and represent gender in ways that don't harm those who don't conform to gender normative ideas. And this module will conclude with a selection of artworks that open up and think through the mind-body dichotomy in ways that challenge gender roles and stereotypes traditionally associated with this dichotomy. At the end of Module 5, you will be able to answer the following questions. What is the mind-body dichotomy? How is the mind-body dichotomy gendered, and how is it used to organize gender roles and gender stereotypes? How is the mind-body dichotomy maintained, reproduced, and reimagined in works of art? How do gender stereotypes that relate to the mind-body dichotomy contribute to sexism, gender discrimination, and inequality? How does the mind-body dichotomy contribute to the maintenance of gender-based violence, particularly against women? At the end of this module, you will be able to use the mind-body dichotomy as an analytical tool to read artworks from a gender perspective. Understand the relationship between the mind-body dichotomy and the public-private dichotomy discussed above. The mind and body distinction. When these dichotomous gender stereotypes become fixed and firmly established, for example, through visual representation, such as works of art, they are slowly normalized and reintroduced into hegemonic social and cultural life as the natural order of things. But in reality, the production of fixed, dichotomous, and hierarchical value-laden gender stereotypes is often harmful to individuals, as it creates gender inequality and contributes to justifying forms of gender-based violence against women at all ages. There are many ways in which the mind-body dichotomy, which associates men with the realm of the mind and women with the realm of the body, comes to produce gender inequality and contribute to sexism and gender-based violence in the everyday lives of individuals, socially excluding a group of people from certain activities, opportunities, and freedoms. For example, because women are seen as closer to and tied to the category of the body due to sexual bodily events such as menstruation, pregnancy, and childbirth, they are still seen, more often than not, as the natural caretakers of children and the home, while men are still very commonly seen as more naturally suited to jobs outside the home. This type of thinking has created more opportunities for men in positions outside the home, such as politics and other forms of civic life, and has affected gender inequality, for example, in relation to job opportunities and the pay gap between women and men. However, when the mind-body dichotomy is challenged, for instance, in situations where the woman suddenly becomes the main income provider and the man the homemaker, traditional ideas about masculinity and femininity socially constructed through this kind of oppositional and dichotomous thinking about gender, femininity and masculinity are disrupted. This can lead to the perpetuation of gender-based violence against women, particularly forms of domestic violence that put women at risk. In these cases, women and witnesses, often children, are exposed to psychological and physical violence. Another example of how the mind-body dichotomy gives rise to gender-based violence against women and girls relates to the ways in which the female body has been objectified and represented in culture. In other words, how women and their bodies have become seen as objects. Feminist theory recognizes several characteristics of the way a person is treated as an object. These include characteristics such as instrumentality. In this case, a person is treated as a tool for the purposes of the objector. Denial of autonomy. In this case, the treatment of a person lacks recognition and respect for the autonomy of and self-determination of the other. Functionality refers to the treatment of a person as interchangeable with other objects. Ownership refers to the treatment of a person as something that is owned by another person. Violability refers to the treatment of a person as lacking boundary integrity. Denial of subjectivity. In this case, the treatment of another person does not take into account his or her experiences and feelings. Reduction to the body. The treatment of a person is identified and reduced to their body or body parts. Reduction to appearance. In this case, the treatment of a person is mainly focused on their appearance or how they appear to the senses. Silencing. The treatment of a person as if they were silent, lacking the ability to speak. Thinking of these characteristics of objectification listed above, can you think of the current forms and cases of gender-based violence against women and girls today? For instance, cases of sexism in advertising, sexualization of girls and women, trafficking of women and girls, any form of violence against women, including forced marriages. And can you think of specific cases where such objectification has harmed an individual? Think, for instance, of cases of cosmetic plastic surgery, anorexia, and body dysmorphic disorders. To become aware of the cultural production of gender stereotypes in art and how works of art contribute to the normalization of gender-based violence against women and girls, we will now engage with a series of works of art from a gender perspective using the socially constructed and strongly gender mind-body dichotomy as an analytical tool. In the platform, you will also find several exercises. For example, as you can see in these two paintings, man is depicted as cultured, learned, and righteous. Woman is depicted as a vessel for children. Woman is thought of as being naturally closer to her body than men. Men are naturally closer to activities of the mind than women. And you can find more examples. And again, look at this picture, at this image. Objectified women, sexualized women. The woman is a property, is an object without subjectivity. And again, here, man is depicted as culture, learned writers. Woman is depicted as a temptress, leading a good man astray and distracting and seducing him. So as a creative and critical practice, art has powerful potential to produce affirmative alternatives that reimagine, reinvent, and remake the world as opposed to only representing and reproducing socially constructed harmful stereotypes and existing hierarchical values. Take a look at the artworks below. How do they challenge, disrupt, subvert the historical hierarchies and stereotypes created through the mind-body dichotomy? What kind of counters narratives do this work convey? And the Guerrilla Girls, well-known political work, Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum? Plays with the visual language of Ingres' painting Grande Odalisque to make the point about how more women are depicted nude by male artists that showcased as artists in control of their own images of femininity. So I hope that you enjoyed this module, and I'm pretty sure that you will look at artworks from today with a different and more conscious gaze, or I hope so. See you soon for the next module.